Our entire energy industry is undergoing a massive transition. The existing centralist supply system, with just a few generators and a large number of consumers, is being broken down step by step to create a decentral system. Already, more than half of the electricity generated in Germany comes from renewable sources, and this trend is increasing heavily. In the resulting smart, cross-sector energy network, the roles of the generating and consuming participants change very flexibly, depending on availability and demand.
Українська армія успішно наступає на півдні України та на Донбасі. Перемога здобувається кров'ю наших воїнів. Просто пам'ятайте, зараз кожної миті мирні Київ, Львів, Хмельницький, Черкаси, Чернівці починаються в Бахмуті, Херсоні, Криму. Вже вдруге енергетична бізнес-спільнота оголошує благодійний аукціон. Це інвестиція в наше майбутнє. Всі кошти від продажу лотів будуть передані Збройним силам України для зміцнення бойової міці нашої армії. Кошти від попереднього аукціону вже працюють на перемогу. Допомагайте Збройним силам України. З нами Бог, з нами генерал Валерій Залужний та наші титани українське військо. Дякуємо всім, хто допомагає. Ми сильні, коли ми разом.
Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second day of the Energy Security Forum, which is the final forum of the year for the Energy Club, the business community that brings together leading companies in the Ukrainian energy market and creates opportunities for communication between its stakeholders. This is the crown of a cycle of more than 90 events held by the Energy Club in 2022, a very complicated year. And of course, due to the complicated situation with the energy supply in Ukraine, we are holding the Energy Security Forum 2022 without online broadcasting, but the full forum recording will be available on YouTube, on the Energy Club channel of the YouTube. I'm glad to announce the forum partners. They are the Ukrainian Energy Exchange, Nadra Geo-Invest Limited Liability Company, Phoenix Contact Limited Liability Company, and the government of Germany, because the event is supported by the German government as part of the project of promoting energy efficiency and the implementation of the EU Energy Efficiency Directive in Ukraine, which of course bodes special significance for today's panel. And this project is being implemented by the German government company GIZ. Before we proceed to the discussion, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that on the 24th of November, the Ukrainian Energy Exchange, the Association of Gas Traders of Ukraine, and the All Ukrainian Energy Assembly and the Energy Club announced a charity auction. And 4 exclusive lots are offered for the auction, and the funds from the sale of lots, the proceeds, will be transferred for the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine. So now I'm happy to tell you that, considering the very important nature of the discussion, we do not set the strict time limit. However, I would like to remind that audience research shows that 7 to 8 minutes is the optimum time span for an intervention. We're going to discuss the topic integration of Ukrainian and European energy markets. What are the next steps? And I'm happy to invite Olena Antonova, the expert on electricity in the energy community, to launch our discussion.
I would like to thank you very much, to thank Energy Club for organizing this event, and kindly thank you, my colleagues, for having me to briefly intervene today. I can say good morning today, at least because it is not the worst day in the last months for the Ukrainian energy infrastructure and greet you with a smile in this event devoted to Ukraine. But of course, this horrible war has become the largest challenge to Ukraine since the time of its independence, and the challenge not only to the energy system physically, as we have seen recently, but also to the energy markets. And we can now see it in every person's life, every person's daily life. The question is that I would ask, could the situation somehow be easier due to historical steps that Ukraine could have made on the way of its integration with the EU energy systems A and with the EU energy markets? If we briefly look back at the history, we can see that the reforms of the Ukrainian energy markets, electricity markets, have been significantly delayed and were falling behind its initial schedule. Market liberalization came 4 years later than it had to be. And the market model operated under the circumstances that were not supposed to be there at all by the time of market model change. Specifically, I'm talking now about the regulation of end user prices for 35% pre-war number of total electricity demand in Ukraine. These are residential consumers and consumers equals to them. All key energy experts and involved government institutions in Ukraine over the last decades have been pointing out the faulty approach in the system. The system of subsidizing this demand has been kept within the energy market, while, for example, in the gas sector of Ukraine, the consumers have been receiving gas support while the prices were formed on a market basis. The system that Ukraine had in place and has in place today clearly rewards those residential consumers who are richer, who are wealthier, and who consume more, and puts them at the same in the same circumstances as consumers who truly need financial support. The concept of energy poverty has not been launched in Ukraine, and methods for protecting energy poor consumers have not been tailored to the needs of such consumers. And the results that we have seen from these problems materialized in significant debts following, even at the peaceful time, following the launch of the market reform in these specific circumstances. And specifically, the largest share of debt was falling with the balancing market of Ukraine. That in turn significantly and negatively impact the financial performance of the key market players, and specifically the largest strategic energy company of Ukraine, Energoatom, producing 50% pre-war of power in the country. During the time of war, one of the key messages that came from certain stakeholders were a proposal to go back to a centralized administrative market model. Could this make situation better? In my opinion, it could not and cannot. And I think it is Ukraine's great achievement that even at the time of the hardest time of war, Ukraine managed to sustain the compliant with third energy package market model, which was and is today, at least when we could physically do it, a basis for commercial trade between Ukraine and EU, following the synchronization of Ukraine's energy system with that of EU, following urgent and positive decision by ENTSO-E. So, what would be the lessons and maybe the ways to look at the situation in the future? Of course, following the technical synchronization, the synchronization of Ukrainian energy markets with that of EU, in my opinion, will be the basis for sustainable and successful rebuild of Ukraine after war. Of course, with the Ukraine now being a candidate of for EU membership, that move will be a basis and a step on the road to EU membership as well. Even though right now it is difficult to say exactly how long the military action will be happening in Ukraine and what will be those results in terms of the infrastructure loss and the need to rebuild, still all key stakeholders who are responsible for development of the legislative basis for the synchronization of the markets, in my opinion, could use this time to do this very important and difficult job of designing and implementing the proper legislative and regulatory measures to effect such market synchronization. These processes will be taking place along the three major lines. First, Ukraine and its energy sector will have to be rebuilt technically. New technological decisions, new energy strategy will have to be developed, incentivizing basically bringing new money and new investment into the sector, and maybe with a different mix of technologies than the one that we have been looking at historically. Second is the resolution of the economic issues of the sector, the ones I've already mentioned, and finding a solution that will not continue to drain resources from the market itself. And third, of course, that will not be possible without a significant legislative and normative work and implementation of regulations. Even right now, at these hardest times, we as a country already have a chance, and these processes are ongoing, to work on legislative initiatives for implementation, for example, of REMIT regulation in Ukraine, with which Ukraine has been delayed significantly. RED II directive had to be implemented by the end of this year. And our most ambitious task is for 2023 would be implementation of the recast directive for the internal electricity market rules 944. Yes, it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work under unbearable circumstances of war. But if this work is done now, then Ukraine will be ready by the end of war. And three groups of key stakeholders, in my opinion, should already form a platform and work on this according to a short-term plan, maybe a year or a year and a half. And that includes regulators, the ministry, the legislator, and the market participants. And of course, the Energy Community Secretariat will always be there for Ukraine with its support and expertise. Slava Ukraini. Thank you for your attention.
Героям слава, glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes, Olena Antonova, concise and as comprehensive as possible as always. Thank you very much. The next person to speak on our panel is going to be just a moment. Oh yes, Mr. Albino Marques. He is the coordinator for the Continental Europe region of ENTSO-E, mentioned by Olena Antonova, by the way.
Good morning, colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I thank you for the invite in my name and the ENTSO-E name. Yes, I am the coordinator of the Continental Group TSOs of ENTSO-E and also the leader of the task force that achieved the emergency synchronization in 16th of March. Well, we are still working in emergency situation. We established a synchronization in an emergency synchronization, in an emergency regime, and we are still working in that regime to integrate the markets. Of course, what we need and what Ukrainians need is peace. But I hope that peace will come and we can evolve from this emergency situation to a peaceful situation when we can work in a different way. Well, you know that the TSO mission is to facilitate the markets and having and making available a transmission network, secure transmission network. After the synchronization, we we had a lot of meetings, you know, with the Ukrenergo, your TSO, and we established the step-by-step process to increase the exchange capacity in cross-border between Ukraine and EU countries, and also with Moldavia. In the beginning, since July, Ukraine started to export electricity for European countries. But unfortunately, since 10 of October and after the terrible attacks that your infrastructure suffered, the export stopped. And now we have been working in increasing the import capacity. But the import of electricity did not yet start. And I don't know the details, but I think it's for economical reasons too, not only for the state of the infrastructure, because now we have 600 megawatts available to imports from European Union countries to Moldova and Ukraine, but for market reasons, the imports have not yet started. And we will continue to work with the Ukrainian TSO to increase more and more the cross-border capacity to allow you to import energy if the prices are good for your market agents to import electricity from the European Union countries. My hope is that the war finishes in benefit of all of us, of course, for the Ukrainian people, and we have a lot of things to do to increase the cooperation between the Ukrainian TSO and ENTSO-E to really integrate your TSO in the normal day processes that the TSOs perform every day to facilitate the market. And I mean, for a few examples, we need to establish a regular capacity calculation process cross-border, because what we have been doing now is more or less learning step by step. We increase 100 megawatts, we monitor the network security, and we increase more 100 megawatts because in times of war, we have not yet the possibility to have a regular capacity calculation like we use in whole European countries, but that's one of our goals. We have also to establish a normal IT and communication infrastructure between your TSO and the European TSOs, because we are still running an emergency IT and communication network established in 15 days in March. And we need to integrate your TSO in our communication network to facilitate all these processes of capacity calculation, grid security analysis, and all the regular process that we have in place in Europe to facilitate the market and to allow regular processes to work. About the cross-border capacity, I think you know there are also some plans. One, let's hope the war allows it. In weeks or months, a new interconnection line between Ukraine and Poland will be reconnected, rebuilt, refurbished. After more than 30 years, that line was out of service. And my hope is that opens another step of increasing the capacity, the cross-border capacity, to allow the market to operate with more capacity. One thing that you know is that now Moldova is also with a lot of issues in their internal electricity system, and the existing capacity, the existing cross-border capacity is really not enough for the needs of Ukraine and Moldova. But we are working, and after when Ukraine will start importing, if the market conditions allow it, and if the infrastructure also allows it, we will look at the security of the grid, and we will increase again the capacity because as I said, it's not enough for the needs of Ukrainian system and Moldova system. Well, and for the moment, I think it's all from my side. I'm available for questions if you have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marques. It is really reassuring to know that ENTSO-E is with us. We are with ENTSO-E and we are following each other and combining our efforts. As far as the questions are concerned, I'm sure that if we were broadcasting this online, we would have a lot of questions, but so far we work without the audience. However, if any of the participants would like to ask a question of Mr. Marques or anyone else, after all have spoken, I will provide you with such an opportunity. Meanwhile, it is a pleasure and honor to me to offer the mic to Jakob Hartmut, the Vice President of the Energoatom.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, dear colleagues from the Energy Club. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to such a distinguished and professional audience this morning, and to express some thought on the part of Energoatom on the topic of discussion today. As for our company, obviously it is well known that we are the biggest producer, the biggest generation capacity company of Ukraine. And this situation has not changed since the beginning of the full-scale invasion by the Russian Federation. Our company, as a result, is confronted with significant challenges as a result of this invasion, as a result of the war that we are experiencing already with devastating consequences already for several months. Just to recall, the biggest challenge for us is the temporary occupation of the Zaporizhzhia plant, which is our largest power plant, to recall, the biggest power plant in Europe, as a matter of fact, and which accounts for 40% of our generation capacity. Obviously, this temporary loss has an impact on our electricity output, which has consequently dropped. However, despite that temporary loss of capacity, we are continuing to fulfill our obligations that are put upon us by the government. The main obligation is the public service obligation for the delivery of low-cost electricity to the residential sector. As a matter of fact, recently, from the 1st of November, the PSO arrangement has been extended until the end of the heating season, until 31st of March of next year. Basically, this PSO arrangement has largely been unchanged by the government, and we are continuing fulfilling our obligations under this arrangement. It is a big challenge for us to fulfill this arrangement because obviously due to the loss of generation capacity, it has become more difficult for us to provide the necessary funds to the system, but we are currently doing our best. And we are obviously grateful for the support given by the Ministry of Energy for their support to continue our fulfilling our obligation under this scheme. Speaking of other challenges, we are doing our best, obviously, as for our remaining generation capacity that is currently operating, that it will operate and continues to operate under the full capacity throughout the heating season. I think we have put together a good plan. Our technical staff is doing their best and doing a fabulous job to facilitate the effective and the continuous operation of our units, despite the challenging circumstances that we are in at the moment. As for the outlook, beyond this challenging period, and obviously we are hopefully or look forward that this situation will not run for too long, and obviously there cannot be any timeline obviously put on this. But if we look beyond the war that is currently going on, we are actively working with key stakeholders in Ukraine, with international stakeholders, with our international partners, for an energy strategy of Ukraine going forward. And we are very satisfied to see that under the first drafts of documents and presentations that we are seeing that are coming out from key experts, that are coming out from key stakeholders, that our company continues to be at the center stage of Ukraine's generation industry post-war. We think this is very, very important circumstances, and it's an appreciation of the work and of the efficiency of our company. And we look obviously forward with the key stakeholders to continue to work to put together appropriate strategy for the electricity industry post-war. Obviously, a key part of that strategy, and we are appreciating that this is already finds its reflection in documents that we are seeing and that we are reviewing, is the replacement of a part of our capacity, or the gradual replacement of our capacity with new, more modern units. And obviously our partnership with Westinghouse is a cornerstone of that. And we are very satisfied to see that this cooperation has already gone a significant path that will allow us, as soon as the war stops, to work on the actual implementation of the construction, on the launch of construction of the first nuclear units, specifically at the Khmelnytskyi site. In terms of opportunities, obviously, what has already been said by the previous two speakers and my colleagues, is that obviously we look forward to participating in the rejoining of the electricity export as soon as the possibility arises and as soon as the situation stabilizes. As a key part of this avenue is obviously the opportunity that the Khmelnytskyi-Zhezhov line opens up for us, for Energoatom, for Ukrainian electricity system as a whole. And I can report obviously here that progress on this line has been made. And there's a cooperation with the colleagues from Ukrenergo, and hopefully this line, despite the war, the work on this line is continuing to be done. And obviously, we believe that with this line in place, operational, this will significantly boost the potential of the company to export electricity to Europe in the future. So by and large, the circumstances are extremely challenging. However, we keep working. We do our job every day. The technical staff does a fabulous job of our company to keep the electricity output going. And with the great work of our military, of the Ukrainian army, we look forward that eventually there will be the occupation of the Zaporizhzhia plant and the deoccupation of the Ukraine as a whole, which then will allow us to start reconstruction of the electricity sector and the further development of the electricity sector as a whole and its further integration into the European systems. Thank you very much, and Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava, thank you very much, Mr. Hartmut. Of course, the problems that Energoatom is facing are immense, but your potential knowledge and expertise is huge. And we not just hope, but we know that in the final count, you will prevail. We shall prevail. And now I invite to speak Mr. Oleksandr Havva. He is the Acting Director General of the joint stock company Market Operator, which is more known to us as Operator Rynku.
Dear colleagues, thank you for invitation and for this extremely important topic to discuss. So we, like a market operator, like a part of this electricity market and the energy system of Ukraine, see that market integration and the benefits of it, for example, the import of electric energy can be one of the way for energy security for Ukraine. Thus, I would like to say that electricity market integration is one of the important priorities of Ukraine in the energy sector, and the market coupling as one of the way of market integration should be the key and the final outcome for Ukraine to introduce full-fledged export and import operations between Ukraine and the EU members states. So after the EU Ministry of Energy have made the political decision to stabilize prices and approve a stabilization steps package, the electricity prices in Europe began to decrease and even became lower in some hours than in Ukraine. In general, electricity prices in neighboring countries decreased by more than 30% in October, if we compare it with September. We, like a market operator, has analyzed the prices of Slovak and Romanian day-ahead markets in October, where Ukraine has a common intersections. The electricity prices there in Romania and Slovak was lower than in Ukraine by 16% in 50 hours, and in some hours more than 40% compared to Ukrainian day-ahead market. Thus, we see that Ukrainian business could take an advantage of such market situation and start buy electricity cheaper. However, we will be able to export it if the situation in our country contributes to this, of course. Thus, why it's extremely important for Ukraine to launch market coupling with the EU. Each EU country that has an interstate interconnection with another one has a designed NEMO. NEMO ensures the efficient operations of single day-ahead coupling and single intraday coupling in their cooperation with TSOs. So we see that the process of market coupling is the very important and easy way to import electric energy in that case, then the price in Europe is lower than in Ukraine, and thus to make a surplus in Ukraine with electric energy. One of the key priorities of the market operator is to become such NEMO, as well as join to single day-ahead coupling and single intraday coupling in the nearest future. On our way to achieve this goal, we have received all consents from all NEMO committee members and joined single head coupling market global NDA as an observer. That step made us close to full-fledged membership in the committee. In addition to changing the regulatory documents forming the rules of the electricity market operation of Ukraine, market operator must be recognized as NEMO, and Ukrenergo must conclude cooperation agreements with the other system operations, as well as to connect to JAO auction office. I would like also to say that the market operator works in close cooperation with the Ministry of Energy and the National Energy and Utilities Regulatory Commission on the issues of this market coupling and the changing of the secondary legislation. We have already sent our proposals of some legal acts drafts to be changed for the consideration to start the process of single head coupling market, common head coupling market regulation implementation in Ukraine as soon as possible. So if Ukraine side will meet all necessary criteria, we could expect the testing mode of market coupling in the second quarter of 2023, and the market operator is technically ready for this launch. We see the market coupling the main priority for the import of electricity energy in a hard time of winter in Ukraine, and also we see such opportunity by our analysis of the prices in Europe and Ukraine. In general, market coupling with the EU countries will make it possible to strengthen the Ukrainian energy system and enhance the energy independence of the United Europe and the Ukraine also. Thank you for your attention. So maybe that's all from my side.
Thank you for providing us with material for attention. As always, Mr. Havva is eloquent and concise. And the next expert to speak is going to be Lisse Geert van Vliet, the business developer at the Ukrainian Energy Exchange, which I remind you is one of the partners in the holding of the forum.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Lisse van Vliet. I'm a business developer for the Ukrainian Energy Exchange. And I want to point out that Ukraine's future is in Europe, is in the European Union. I think it became more and more clear over the last months that there's only one way forward. Even though we were already part of the energy community, of course, that is going towards integration of the energy markets, of the energy sector. But now currently, we are also a candidate country. So to move forward to this integration with the European Union, today I want to speak about the need to remove further barriers to trades. So the integration of Ukrainian and European energy markets, what should be the next step? As we see, the basis for integration is already correct. Before the war started, Ukraine was already a front runner in the energy communities regarding implementation of legal acts. We were already the poster child. And therefore, I would like to say that, yes, I see the perspective of Ukraine in the European Union as a fully integrated country. First of all, I want to also give my respect to Ukrenergo and to all the other participants in the Ukrainian energy sector for keeping the electricity, the gas, and the heat supply to the population. I can personally only express my respect and deep gratitude for the work that you are doing. And I think one of the things that follows from this crisis, from this horrible invasion, is that everything is possible, and that obstacles that we would see before for integrating the markets are actually relatively easy to solve. Now we are faced with such disastrous events. And as already Olena pointed out earlier during her intervention, it's really with deep respect that I have to say that Ukraine managed to keep the competitive model for the electricity market. It's kept the market model alive, which is very respectful. Even in the European Union, many countries talked of intervening in the electricity market and wanted to intervene in the wholesale market for electricity, which we also managed to avoid. So there's currently no chaos and disunity in Europe, which was obviously the goal of the aggressor. And for this, I can only show respect and well done. So this slide might be familiar to many of the participants and also probably to the viewers. It's a familiar slide of Acer, which published its assessment of the electricity market, of the integrated electricity wholesale market in Europe. It basically concluded that through cross-border trade and through the integration of electricity markets, we managed to save over 34 billion euros in consumer welfare, which significantly contributed to the security of supply in Europe. the main message of the report by Acer was that we need to keep the integrated electricity market as it is alive. We need to refrain from intervening in the formation of price signals, and we need to stay away from ill-designed emergency measures that will distort these price signals, because these price signals are something that we need, especially for the decarbonization track that we are currently on in Europe, but also in the future in Ukraine, especially when the war situation will be over. And keeping the internal energy market, the integrated electricity markets alive is very much important also for the integration of the EU, because breaking down the integrated electricity markets will cause more harm than it would be, than it would have possible positive consequences for prices for consumers. So I think here, the measures that you see, I will not go into detail. The report of Acer is still available, but what we can see is that even though there was much pressure on European policymakers to intervene in the markets, through these measures that Acer reported and that Acer said that could be implemented, such as providing collateral support, so being more flexible with the collateral statements for making trading available for the high margin calls. To avoid bankruptcies, there were some companies bailed out, most notably a certain German company, RWE. And we are indeed implementing demand flexibility. There is a draft network code is currently in the pipeline. And also many vulnerable customers were indeed protected. So yes, through these less market interventionist measures proposed by Acer, much harm was already avoided. And we can see that indeed, these measures were correct. It stabilized the price situation in Europe, and it preserved the market model as we know it. So please go to the next slide. Because I would like to speak a bit about market coupling for Ukraine. We already had colleague Havva from the market operator speaking a bit about it and his ambition to join, but I would like to go a bit more into some of the barriers that we can still see from Ukrainian energy exchange and in general that we can see for Ukraine. Because of course, Ukraine already declared its desire to become part of the market coupling mechanism, which is a pan-European interzonal market. But we should state that it is indeed on paper possible for a non-EU country to already join the market coupling mechanism. Most notable example here is Norway, which is the market in which Nord Pool operates the market, which has been one of the members of this one of the members of the market coupling already since the beginning. But it's very important that the CACM rules and other EU regulations are being implemented. Therefore, I would like to stress as a first point that indeed many legislative changes need to be implemented by a non-EU country, which we as Ukraine still are, be able to join. I listed some of the regulations there, which you can read for yourself, but it's important that it is possible and that, for example, as an example, we can also use, for example, Switzerland, which has an intergovernmental agreement between the EU and Switzerland, and also has an Acer opinion on this cooperation. And this would also be possible in theory for Ukraine. Secondly, which is an important barrier to, from a Ukrainian side, is the admission of non-residents to the markets. So currently, it's still mandatory to open a legal entity in Ukraine. And even though there's many Ukrainian companies that opened already legal offices in the EU for market coupling to work, it should also be able to trade electricity in the Ukrainian market without necessarily opening a legal office. Here, I should stress that it's indeed already good that there is, to my knowledge, a working group already established on the Ministry of Energy with some key stakeholders for uniting the electricity markets of the EU and energy community countries. And thirdly, we noted the taxes, currency, and customs restrictions. Taxation issues are one of the key issues that prevented centralized clearing from being implemented in Ukraine, because In the EU, electricity and gas is not taxed as long as it's in the transmission system, which is the case in Ukraine currently. This is one of the barriers to trade and to further integration. Secondly, the currency restrictions is that this is one of the issues that we see, for example, with posing collateral. So there is still currency restrictions for the sending of collateral, which is needed for being able to trade on the platform. And the customs clearings of electricity should be automated as commercial products in the market coupling. So this is also something that needs to be implemented. Fourthly, it's one of the most important, is the pricing issues. Is that market coupling equalizes prices, as you know, in the different trading zones. And without such market coupling, price volatility might be even 7 times higher than it would be previous to this, to this implementation of market coupling. And this is important that we stay away from price regulation on a wholesale level in Ukraine in the future when implementing market coupling. Fifthly, we have the access to the network. This means that under the CSCM, we need to switch to implicit allocation, the implicit allocation of cross-border capacity. And also that means for the single intraday coupling and the single day ahead coupling. And also we need to adhere to the 70% cross-border capacity rule that is instituted at EU level. Sixthly, there's the need to switch to, in our opinion, there's the need to switch to a competitive model for NEMOs in Ukraine. There's, as currently in the law in Ukraine, there is a monopoly model instituted, but in many countries in the EU, there is a competitive model, which means that there might be a possibility for multiple NEMOs to operate in one country, and which in our opinion has obvious competitive advantages. For example, until 2016, only Epic Spot would operate in the trading area, Germany, Luxembourg. And after Nord Pool was able to join, we saw really a rise in competitive competition, which means more innovation and more investments into providing better services to the participants. Even if we would go in Ukraine for a monopoly NEMO, there is a need to adhere to very strict admission criteria, and Ukraine would need to be very sure that all these requirements are fulfilled, because it's a very difficult process in which it would always be very welcome to work with experienced and professional partners. And seventhly, we have the approval of the connection to the market coupling and membership in the All NEMO committee, which was already briefly explained by the colleague from the market operator. And here I should also mention that it is still difficult, because we have the example of CPEX, for example, in Serbia, which already proved its technical readiness to join the 4MMC market coupling area in 2016. But it wasn't still not able to join due to the lack of affirmation of the different documents and agreements. Then I would go to the next slide, in which I would briefly talk about the forward market and some of the different advices and different things we see, because the competitive long-term markets are indeed a key role for maintaining investment and for risk management purposes. So if you could please go to the next slide. Exactly, perfect. And then, we see that the previous points that I mentioned for market coupling in the short-term market, many of them are also applicable for the long-term markets and improving the integration of forward markets in Europe, so from Ukraine with the rest of the EU. But here I would like to point out a few specific points. So first, the need for Ukraine to join a pan-European capacity allocation platform, which was already mentioned by some of the earlier speakers. So I will not go into depth too much there. Secondly, the standardization in trade on the forward market is really important. Standardized contract. I'm sure that the colleague from EFET will also point this out. And I want to point out here that UEEX has already a bilateral counter-auction mechanism system in place, but there is currently not too much interest from participants to join this platform, but it is important for going forward, and especially when you want to integrate further with the EU. So just to mention that we have this already in place. Thirdly, there is the combination of forward markets or even forward market coupling, which was coined by the Acer-SEER report, which came out only a few months ago. This report looked at the improving of forward markets in Europe because some lack liquidity, transparency, etc. Even though one of their recommendations for market coupling was received lukewarm, we still see that this might be interesting for Ukraine in the future to work together to integrate also forward markets more with the EU. Fourthly, we have the reporting and transparency, also known as REMIT. This is currently the second reading going on, but I want to point out that UEEX is already sharing data with the NSSMC, and that indeed we are already adhering to the strictest standards there. There are the government support schemes. There is a variation of support schemes in the EU for supporting renewable energy. But for the export of green electricity from Ukraine, it is important to implement a GO scheme, guarantees of origin, for which work is already ongoing. But even there's some more problems on the way, especially because the RED II directive is still saying that there need to be separate agreements concluded for GO trading between EU and non-EU countries. Again, Serbia here is a good example, which has its own GO scheme, has its own registry, but is still not able to, is still member even of the issuing body for GOs, but is still not able to trade cross-border. And sixthly, there's the decarbonization, which we all know should happen. Maybe it's now a bit on a backtrack in Ukraine because it's more about energy security, which is also the topic of this important conference. But we should know that CBAM is coming, the cross-border adjustment mechanism, which is posing also difficulties for Ukraine if we do not adhere to the special criteria for energy community countries, which are that we need to be climate neutral by 2030. We need to have an ETS equivalent system in Ukraine by the 1st of January 2030, which has a similar price as the EU system. And also we need not to import electricity from countries that do not have such a scheme in place. Well, I don't think that will be a problem in the future, especially the third one, because we can see that electricity imports from the Eastern neighbors will be impossible, and much respect to the work also done by ENTSO-E and the colleagues on further integration and making imports and exports possible of electricity. And on my final slides, in which I will quickly conclude, is just about UEEX and our electricity market, and just showing that indeed there has been a hard hit on electricity infrastructure, on energy infrastructure, but we can see that we remained stable operation, and there are still 70% of the electricity markets on our platform compared to the day-ahead market and the intraday, which is only 30%. So here are some of the numbers that we have been able to publish for the first 10 months in 2022 compared to 2021. And you can see that there's indeed, still a very stable operation, even though volumes dropped a bit, which is mostly to the PSO under martial law going off organized trade. But I am sure that I already passed the most efficient speaking time of 7 minutes, but I would like to give back the floor, and thank you a lot for sharing the presentation and sharing your interest with me.
Thank you very much, Lisse. Detailed and convincing as always. Now let's hear from Mark Lane, who is the principal economist at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Mr. Lane.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for inviting EBRD to speak here today. I'll go through some of the points, some of my probably won't go on too much because they've already been covered. The first thing I suppose from the EBRD side in terms of what we've been doing, we've basically looked to repurpose a number of existing loans that we would have had with some clients and for example Naftogaz and Ucrnegro.
And at the moment as well, we're basically looking at kind of emergency procurement, providing additional kind of loans, also kind of trying to increase grant funding available to basically kind of try to cover kind of the emergency needs, say kind of for the damaged equipment that's kind of, I suppose kind of that Ukraine has experienced recently. In terms of that, I suppose kind of we're basically kind of also looking at, say, the immediate emergency needs in terms of trying to kind of look at the procurement for the destroyed infrastructure that's already there. But I think we also kind of need to flag kind of going forward that there's a need for a supply chain kind of, because it's not just a case of that kind of replacing the damaged equipment, but also having a supply chain in place to cover kind of future needs. And particularly kind of, I suppose, if you look at, say, certain equipment that is maybe kind of difficult to source in certain countries. So if you look at the 750 kV, some of that kind of in terms of transformers, they're not necessarily available everywhere. So I think kind of we're trying to kind of identify kind of where it's possible to be able to kind of source, say, kind of different needs across different equipment, and then looking at it for in terms of immediate support, but then also, like I said, in terms of the more enduring supply chain. We are, I suppose, kind of from the ENTSO-E side, I'll just kind of mention quickly, the key issues that we would see is obviously the full synchronization. I won't go into that because Albino kind of mentioned it earlier on. The other thing that we would see as well as important is the actual full membership of Montenegro kind of into ENTSO-E. And I think at the moment kind of it has observer membership, but then it's also kind of having to pay, say, certain fees. Once it's a full member, it will basically get full access, kind of the same as any of the other TSOs. I think kind of at the moment as well, we're also looking at covering the participation fees for Montenegro kind of in ENTSO-E as well, in terms of kind of past costs that have been there kind of for observership, but then kind of future kind of costs as well until they become a full member. So that's something that we're looking at the moment. Internally, I would say kind of in Ukraine, I think kind of I would say kind of applaud the work that's been done and the fact that kind of the market is still kind of still open. I suppose a number of areas that we would see as important would be kind of where there were issues basically before the war commenced. So in terms of, say, direct reactive kind of changes that would have been there to the market for renewables, and also I suppose in terms of kind of SOE governance and reform. And we would see kind of obviously that these are areas kind of as we go forward kind of after the war that would need to be kind of addressed, and try to make sure that kind of we have I suppose kind of regulatory certainty kind of put in place, so that if you're looking at the huge investment needs that are going to be needed for the market going forward, you need to try to kind of instill kind of regulatory certainty in the country kind of to be able to kind of attract kind of private sector investment. On the EU market integration side, we would see it as kind of in terms of two different steps. The first one would be kind of more the interim, and obviously I think a key priority is to be able to start kind of, I suppose, kind of with the exports and imports kind of to and from kind of Ukraine. And we think that's key. Obviously, in terms of kind of providing financing, if you look at the renewables in terms of being able to be funded as well, kind of it would add kind of, and I suppose kind of for all kind of generation companies, it would add much needed kind of capital kind of to the market at the moment if they're able to export. And again, I think in terms of security of supply, it's great that you have the ability to be able to import if needed, kind of, and that's available. I suppose one question is then if you do have the requirement or the need to be able to import, it's a question of how the cost of that would be kind of covered. I think that's an issue kind of it's a thorny issue kind of that probably hasn't been addressed. So I think on the export side, it's fairly clear. There's still, I suppose, kind of a bit of a question mark on the import side. Longer term, I think in terms of enduring arrangements, we've mentioned, I think it's been mentioned already a few times in terms of compliance with the requirements in the third energy package and clean energy package. A lot of the work, I suppose, kind of, or some of the work has been done at least on this, and it was done kind of before the war started. But if you look at, say, the network codes, there's quite a few requirements there in terms of conditions, methodologies that still would need to be done. If we kind of look, say, kind of at the forwards market in terms of the forwards capacity allocation code, it's obviously kind of looking at, say, kind of maybe kind of joining JAO. For the day-ahead market, you obviously have kind of market coupling, which has been mentioned already. And I would say kind of just maybe kind of on the market coupling side, It's moving kind of, like I said, from the interim arrangements where you have explicit allocation to moving to the implicit allocation with market coupling. But that would obviously require more work in terms of the NEMO designation and deciding whether it's going to be monopoly or competitive NEMO, kind of, and I would support kind of Lisse in terms of the competitive NEMO side. It's also then, once you have the NEMO established, the NEMO being able to join the NEMO committee. In addition to that, you also have the requirements that are there, all the contractual requirements in terms of with the TSO and the NEMO in terms of joining the Market Coupling Steering Committee, and all the agreements that are there in terms of day-ahead operation agreements or intraday operation agreements. All of this kind of still needs to be done. I think on the TSO side, I think kind of Albino had mentioned it already, that you obviously need, say, kind of the capacity calculation, say, kind of region to be established, and obviously kind of the methodology for that region. You also have, say, kind of in terms of development of the individual grid models that would feed into the common grid model. You also have, say, I suppose, the determination of what the bidding zone is going to be that would need to link in. And I suppose from a security point of view, kind of, it's also a question as to if you're looking at, say, kind of regional security coordinators, and I suppose kind of looking at maybe kind of membership of whether it's TCNet or, say, kind of some other kind of RSC kind of going forward as well. So there's a lot of areas in terms of where work is going on in Ukraine in terms of, say, kind of development of the market, but it's how you increase the actual integration and full coordination across all the different things that are in place. Obviously for intraday, kind of it's joining, say, kind of XBID, kind of that's there. With the balancing, that's a key one, I think, in terms of kind of, I suppose, kind of for security kind of as well. And it's looking at, say, kind of the PAN-EU platforms that are kind of being established now in terms of, say, kind of automatic, what's kind of frequency restoration reserves, and manual frequency restoration reserves, with the platforms that are there in terms of kind of Mari, Picasso. Again, it's basically looking at joining all of these kind of over time. Obviously, that's quite a lot of work to kind of cover. But I think it's somewhat kind of like just setting out the steps that still need to be done to move away kind of from, I suppose, having kind of effectively a national market kind of with explicit allocation cross-border to moving to full integration across the EU. And I suppose, yeah, I think in terms of time, I've probably taken up quite a bit, so I'll stop there.
Well, you've been able to put as much useful information as possible into your time. And thank you for adding this important aspect to our discussion. I'm pleased to offer the mic now to Mr. Arben Kllokoqi, who is the Director for Electricity Market Design, EFET.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. And,
yes.
Thank you. I think when you have a lot of panelists that cover very well the topics, I think there is not much to say afterwards. I think a lot has been said. To me, I would try to be a little bit provocative than changing the scenario that I made in the beginning, what I thought I would say, because all of the topics were mentioned, and I don't think there's a point of repeating them. But in an aim to be provocative, I think it's worth at least triggering a bit of discussions and thoughts from the perspective of reality that we live in right now. I mean, you rightly, Mr. Chairman or Mr. Moderator, Mr. Kulykov, mentioned in the beginning that the situation is overly complex. I think even that is an understatement in this case. I mean, Ukraine is going through a heavy aggression, military aggression, which has affected all the sectors. I mean, it has affected the lives of people, unfortunately, and of course, it has had a significant impact in the energy sector as well. Now, from this point of view, I kind of, all the points that were made related to market integration are very important, and one has to really salute that perspective that despite all the difficulties, Ukrainians' commitment to integrate its market with European markets or European Union is strong and shows the very strong commitment of Ukrainian policymakers and stakeholders. But I think it's very important also to use the opportunity of this panel discussion to note that at the existing circumstances, Ukraine needs really a lot of support. And I think here, we shouldn't close this panel without inviting once again all the donors and all the institutions that can provide such support. And I'm talking about the support when, first of all, financial support for the electricity sector, because despite the fact that there are a lot of damages done to infrastructure, there is lack of electricity in Ukraine, there will be a really significant need to improve the infrastructure. So the support will have to continue also after the war and after Ukraine wins this war. This is the first point, and then Ukraine needs a lot of support. So the stakeholders, energy stakeholders, we need a lot of support in order to maintain the infrastructure. I think energy community is doing a very job. Energy community secretariat is doing a very good job here and trying to pool all this support that is given by different TSOs or different companies throughout Europe. And trying to arrange all this support that it reaches to the energy companies, Ukrenergo mainly, but also other companies. I think this is probably the first message that should go out there. Also, in this respect, inviting donors, seeing Mark present here, and I'm sure that EBRD has done a lot. But the situation that we have calls for a lot of support, unfortunately. And then going down to maybe some market points, again, a little bit with urgency, and I will not refer too much to those that we expect to see in the coming years also on the other contracting parties. But I think there is a lot of improvement that could be done already during this period. We do have explicit allocation in the borders between Ukraine and now Slovakia and Romania. Of course, Poland as well, but that's slightly different. But I think it's important that these auctions or this capacity allocation, and now I'm speaking also on behalf of EFET and where market participants would expect to see improvements, is that this capacity is allocated through joint auction. Of course, market coupling is for the day-ahead capacity and intraday capacity is the ultimate objective, but we should make the first step, and the first step should be that the capacity is allocated through joint auctions, so that a market participant can actually go into one auction office and buy capacity and then use that capacity for flowing from EU member state to Ukraine or from Ukraine to EU member states. As it is now, you have to either go to both TSOs to get the capacity in order to materialize the commercial contract, or you have to buy to one TSO and find the counterparty that has the capacity on the other side of the border to do the contract. So the existing situation limit a lot and provide a lot of constraint for the proper competition. So this is very important, and I think it's something that can be done quickly. So there is a quick win there. I know that also Energy Community Secretariat has worked a lot, including also ENTSO-E in this respect. But I think there is a lot of gains to be a lot of improvement to be gained on this point. The other point is that what we see now as a barrier, it's not necessarily coming only from the market point of view. We have seen the measures undertaken by some of the member states, and I will refer now to the measures that have been undertaken in Romania. This is the so-called clawback mechanisms that kind of puts a charge on the transaction, on each transaction, a charge which is from 95% up to 100% on the net revenues. And this is a measure that undermines any cross-border trading with Romania. And in fact, it's impossible for any market participant now, even if the prices are at the level that Ukrainians would be able to afford certain import, any market participant would not actually offer any electricity from Romania to neither Ukraine nor Moldova. This is a classic and very good example on how certain measures would not only impact the market exchanges, but impact also the security of supply. We have had the situation where electricity went off in Moldova as well because of the issues that Ukraine was experiencing, but there was no possibility for market participants to provide any export, in this case from Romania to Moldova. So this is also an important remark to make, that some of the measures that are being undertaken for the purpose of protecting the consumers from the impact of the prices would have a significant impact in the security of supply on other countries. And finally, maybe I would make also another point with respect to market coupling. It's important to know that Energy Community Secretariat will, and I'm now only referring to Secretariat because I know that they are working, and by the end of this year, we should, there is a plan to see the big package that is discussed, the package that includes CACM, FCA, balancing guideline, and also system operation guideline into within the framework of Energy Community, which from legal point of view paves the way for future market coupling. I think no one disputes the market coupling, but I think discussing about market coupling in these circumstances to me is a bit maybe looking far ahead in future and forgetting about some of the main things that can be done already in practice today. But market coupling will come, but it will most probably take some time. And of course, once the legal package is approved, the expectation is this December, I think this is the time when all the institutions should take into account and the requirements that are put in that package, and take over the responsibilities to fulfill, to transpose the legislation into the Ukrainian legal framework, and of course implementation would come with that as well. This is in relation to market coupling. I think with this, I probably would close my remarks, my introductory remarks, which, as I said, I had some other points to make, but they were already mentioned, and I want to maybe just put this relevance of the emergency measures today, as opposed to how we see the market maybe 2, 3, or 5 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kllokoqi. And I must disappoint you. There was nothing provocative in your intervention. It was just an honest concern that sounded in your voice and your words. So thank you for doing this. Dear gentlemen and ladies, we still have 8 minutes to go within this span of time for this discussion. So if anyone wants to ask any question of anyone, I'm going to allow this, and probably the person who will be asked the question will be even able to answer. Mark Lane raised his hand. Please.
Yeah, I don't have so much a question, but I think I would just like to add to what Arben said there. I think the importance of, when we basically spent, I suppose, a lot of time looking at all the arrangements that need to be put in place, which are quite extensive. And I would agree that I think the immediate focus should be on the emergency needs that are there and trying to deal with the, I suppose, the current war situation first before and then looking ahead maybe in terms of post-war. But I think the focus clearly has to be on the emergency needs that are there at the moment. And I think, when you do look at market coupling in that, given the work that would be required to comply fully in terms of the full integration with all the different platforms and bodies that are there, it will take a significant period of time, even when you're not looking at wartime conditions or even post-war. For the EU countries, it took a considerable period of time to get everything done. So it would be something I suppose as a process to look at the immediate needs first in terms of what needs to be done, the quick wins that can be put in place, in terms of I suppose looking at increasing imports and exports, and with the explicit allocation before you start looking at the full integration program. The other point I would make as well, and I think it's something that Arben touched on, is the need for investment and the need for donor support. I think what we're finding, I suppose, is that at the moment, I think the bank is effectively taking some risk on its balance sheet, which is something that we wouldn't have done before in practice. Now but I think we're the only IFI that's actually doing it. And I think it's a case as well that given the scale of investment that's required, that donor support is going to become key and more important as we go forward as well, in addition to loans that are provided from IFIs. And I would add then as well that obviously the situation in Ukraine is extremely bad at the moment. The situation in Moldova is extremely dire as well. And I suppose anything that can be done to try to improve security of supply and get cross-border trading between Ukraine and Moldova, and obviously then via maybe Romania in the shorter term or more medium term, would be extremely beneficial as well, not just to Ukraine but also to Moldova.
Thank you very much for this important addition. Anyone wants to chip in? Not at the moment. Okay, so thank you everybody for the important thoughts and ideas that you shared. Thank you for painting an honest picture of what is happening. And thank you also for presenting your vision of how we get out of this situation and build on the basis of what's been achieved and despite what is being destroyed. With this, I am announcing the end of this panel and just remind you that on the 24th of November, there will be a charity auction held by the Ukrainian Energy Exchange and the Association of Gas Traders of Ukraine, the All Ukrainian Energy Assembly, and the Energy Club business community. 4 exclusive lots will be offered for the auction, and all the proceeds are going to support the Ukrainian armed forces. Thank you very much. See you again, and thank you for all the work you are doing despite dire circumstances. Goodbye.
One thing that has remained unchanged at Phoenix Contact since 1923 is our passion for technology. With new ideas, we turn challenges into opportunities and into solutions for the future. Phoenix Contact is a German family-owned company and global player. Thanks to our several development sites, 10 production sites, and more than 50 worldwide sales subsidiaries, our solutions are always where our customers need them. The world is becoming more intelligent, more flexible, more digital. Today already, we're developing appropriate products and solutions. For example, web technologies and security mechanisms are already part and parcel of many of our products and manufacturing processes. Together with our customers and partners, we are helping to shape Industry 4.0, the intelligent production of tomorrow. Keeping in mind a sustainable use of resources and respecting the environment are priorities for us. Let's look ahead and shape the future together.
Українська армія успішно наступає на півдні України та на Донбасі. Перемога здобувається кров'ю наших воїнів. Просто пам'ятайте, зараз кожної миті мирні Київ, Львів, Хмельницький, Черкаси, Чернівці починаються в Бахмуті, Херсоні, Криму. Вже вдруге енергетична бізнес-спільнота оголошує благодійний аукціон. Це інвестиція в наше майбутнє. Всі кошти від продажу лотів будуть передані Збройним силам України для зміцнення бойової міці нашої армії. Кошти від попереднього аукціону вже працюють на перемогу. Допомагайте Збройним силам України. З нами Бог, з нами генерал Валерій Залужний та наші титани українське військо. Дякуємо всім, хто допомагає. Ми сильні, коли ми разом.